This is Business Therapy, where we bring the truth to the human side of business and heal from the inside out. I'm your host, Diane Hansen, and I am followed by my co-host, Christine Salvo.
Hello.
And we are here today with Anthony, and Anthony is here. We've been talking about burnout today, and Anthony is
an expert at burning myself out.
Yeah, he's in the class of professionals who are among the most burned out, and those are those who pursue the roller coaster of self-employment.
Indeed.
So, Anthony, what prompted you to become self-employed? Were you employed by somebody else before?
Yeah, so it was kind of, the decision kind of, I fell into it like a lot of, most people I know that end up pursuing their own business kind of fall into it or follow some sort of a calling. And in my case, I was out here in Nevada, in Reno, lost 2 jobs while I was here in 1 year, and kind of thought to myself, well, what are my options out here for employment? What's available? And then kind of saw like, well, what if I just expanded beyond the local economy and said, hey, I can work anywhere? Are there platforms out there for that? And so I did follow a couple online platforms that allowed freelance engineering, chemical formulation, even corporate video training, script writing, as potential options for me. So I'm like, okay, great. I can set my own schedule. I can set my own rates. I can, and there's that learning curve at the beginning of like, okay, I need to get business, so I'm going to have to sell myself a little bit short, but I need to also be able to cover my basic expenses. And then you realize very quickly what your load is, and how much energy you're spending and how much you're getting in return. So you find that out very quickly.
Yeah, and what business did you fall into as a result of that?
Well, just I'm not sure how else to categorize it. So I call myself a chemical engineer and formulation chemist. Just recently, I wrapped up a project developing liquid foam glass. I wrapped up a petrochemical engineering training video script. I've just got a shampoo formula certified for the EPA. Over the summer I worked on military explosives. I kind of just saw something crazy and I said, hey, I can probably do that.
Wow. So I'm really interested to hear from Christine about this.
Yeah, I'm finding this very unique.
Yeah, I'm so curious, the psychology. So Christine is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a licensed hypnotist, a mediator. She specializes in how people communicate. So when somebody, Christine, wants to bring up kind of the difficult conversation of, hey, friends, family, people who might think I'm crazy, I want to go work for myself. What happens psychologically there? How would you recommend that crucial conversation go down to avoid burnout?
Oh, to avoid burnout. So first and foremost, I'd say congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing. You sound really like a pioneer in your field. I can't say that I've heard anybody do this kind of work. Especially freelance and for yourself.
And I'm like, I would love to have a team behind me, but essentially I'm a one-man engineering team who's got to keep track of the books and place the bids and build the proposals and jump into several different industries that have different focal points, whether it be product development or formulation or process improvement. So.
And be the scientist.
Yeah.
The inventor.
I've got to do everything.
So instead of kind of asking my opinion on the communication on that, I'm curious what did happen. So when you're like, hey, I lost 2 jobs and things aren't really going my way here, and you're going, I'm going to do this on my own. What kind of conversations did you have?
Well, the conversation with my friends was pretty, they didn't seem to be concerned because they know me. They know that I've had this incredible ability to float through turmoil and uncertainty, between, I've lived between coasts. I went to grad school. found my way back, jumped into different industries. My parents, on the other hand, it was more of like a conversation of when are you going to get a real job, because it doesn't make sense to them in their mind. My dad just retired from a job that he's had since the 80s. My mom was she was a special ed teacher for or assistant and substitute teacher for the district back home. And I did actually this past year get into part-time teaching at the local community college, teaching chemistry on top of, engineering consulting. Actually, the teaching came first, and then I found out how much I was making, and I'm like, I'm going to have to do more. So yeah, like it's been an interesting sort of, array of support that I've had. I'd say that my parents don't really understand it. They'd be happy if I got a stable job that had steady income and benefits and a 401k. But personally, I think what I do is exciting. I think it's got potential to grow if I've got the right support and the right sort of business plan.
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship in general kind of, you have to have a little spark of crazy, a little spark of madness. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you're jumping into the unknown regardless, no matter what kind of business it is. It's like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. I'm going to go for it anyway.
Absolutely. And it is so, it's almost that leap of faith that you have to give it. And because our society is so wired to say, this is what success looks like. Mm-hmm. Success looks like you go to college, these days you go get a master's degree on top of your 4-year degree. Then you find a job, you work your way up in the company. You might go to several companies but you have a career path and you follow that career path, and we're all aiming toward retirement. I'm sorry. Death is not a life plan.
And I did follow that. I did follow that plan too. And I'm like, this isn't working. I'm like, I've got my master's degree. I went to undergrad. I went to grad school. I applied for over 300 jobs when I graduated. I couldn't find anything. I had to move back home, and it was just a lot of like turmoil. But I did what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And it didn't work.
So would you mind kind of saying a little bit more without too much? What happened with those jobs that didn't work in Reno?
Basically, and this is, I guess I can say that it's this was part of the cannabis industry. And one thing I've learned about the cannabis industry is that it's so new, and there's a lot of corporate sort of, it's very much run like a tech company. So it's like if things don't look like they're on track after 3 months, fire everybody, hire new staff, and keep moving forward. And it's a volatile industry.
Anytime you're dealing with any startup, any of my clients that are startups, I get them straight on the process immediately and get them standardized, because if they don't, that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to say, oh, look at what we hired. It's their fault. They're going to point the fingers and shoot, they're out, everybody goes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I identify. I personally have been laid off from 85% of the companies I've worked for. Yeah. That I never, ever in my life thought that would be a proud statistic, but it is, because as you're going through this life, you start collecting data about yourself. And what I learned very quickly is that I am one of those people who, even if it wasn't my own thing, I'd make my own thing of it. And I'd start driving my own thing. And in corporate America, they don't necessarily fly. And in startups, they don't have the process for it. So now what do? I help companies with process. So, I had to find my own path, but I think there's a certain bravery to looking at what the typical life plan is for the typical American red-blooded male and saying, not me.
Sure. And female too, right?
And female too, but our guest is gender.
Well, and I think that the other option, it's like, okay, well, this didn't work, so what are the options I have before me? And like oftentimes it resorts to settling or saying like, you know what, this isn't ideal. It's a job, it'll make me a paycheck, sure, I'll do it.
Well, not only that, but what about the people that
you're not enthusiastic?
They're not even working in their field.
Yeah.
So you take all this time, you spend all this money, you know what you want to do. And now you're doing something completely different for that paycheck, like you said.
Right.
So it's pretty incredible to me that you've turned this into your own.
I was determined. I'm like, I spent a lot of money on college. college. So
Yeah.
I'm going to make that degree work. I'm going to figure out like, and that's kind of, I guess, like I've always had that engineering mindset of like troubleshooting and, trying to figure out, okay, this is the goal. This is the place that people want to go. I'm over here. How do we build that track that doesn't exist yet?
So what are some of your big challenges, the kind of most burnout-inducing challenges you have your career?
Like I mentioned, I'm an expert at burning myself out. I think October is when I really hit a wall on that one. And I think the one way I burn myself out is just simply by taking on too many projects. And like I'll get this sort of enthusiasm when I'm placing bids for these proposals, and when I've got like multiple clients that are willing to pay me a lot of money to do these things, I'm like, I'm just, give me it all. Like I'm gonna do it all. I'm never gonna sleep again. And that's when it starts to. I think once that pile is sitting on my plate, then I start to get that anxiety of like, I know where this is headed. I know that this is going to be bad.
Is it just you in your company right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm kind of getting this visual of you, like, on one hand, you take the jobs because it means security. And the one thing that's really limited in self-employment is security. But then on the second side, it's your possible ability to perform, especially meeting deadlines and doing that. So on one hand, it's creating ease, and on the other hand, it's creating pressure.
It definitely, and I think that there is that, like the motivator is, like I know what my living expenses are. I know what my rent is. I know how much money I'm going to need to make in order to cover those and to, live a comfortable lifestyle on top of that. That's always the goal, not just to survive and pay everything and be at zero by the end of the month. And then when you start to build that clientele also, and you've got return customers, and then you still get, I might even get people that source me out and ask me to do the work for them, and I hate saying no because I want to do it all. I want to build this into a sustainable company where I've got project managers where I can say, hey, this is your strong point. Like you should take on this project. I'll take this on. Well, this is my biochemist who's more versed in these kind of projects. So
you have a big vision.
I do have a big vision.
You know where you're going.
I hope so.
You do. You do. What's missing right now is the foundation of capacity planning.
That's and I found that a big part of that is, I think a big part of capacity planning is, I always talk to my clients and my friends about managing customer expectations, because like they might not even they don't have any clue what it's going to take for you to do this thing, and they're asking me to do things that to develop technology that may not even exist yet. I've got one company that I've been lagging on it because they want me to make like a fire extinguishing material that can fit behind a switch plate. And he basically implied that he wants me to develop a chemical process that doesn't currently exist. I'm like, this is like thesis level work. How much what's your budget, dude?
Right.
Right.
Totally.
And I was going to ask
brilliant,
that.
yeah.
You need to make sure that when you're bidding these projects, that these projects are going to account for not just you. If your capacity is at the max as you're bidding, you have the opportunity during the bidding process to retrofit the bid to what needs to be done. So you can say, okay, this is a little bit outside my expertise. I can source this person. I know how much this person is going to cost, and then retrofit that back to how much it's going to be. And then you bid the project as if you're not involved. Now, if you are involved, more money for you. But if you have to bring on help, the capacity planning gives you that flex to do that. So you do get that ease in there.
Right.
And I always tell people as well that if it's just you, you've created yourself a job. If you have people that you oversee, you're managing projects, but you don't necessarily be there, apply the beach test, you have a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of the roughest part is that I've only been doing this like as a main source of income since March of last year,
Okay.
and I've already got like a revolving door of anywhere
Yeah.
between 7 to 12 clients.
So you're successful.
Yes,
I
you
guess,
are.
yeah.
Right.
You
and,
are.
And self-employment really is different than a business. You know, I've had to make that differentiation
It
for
is.
myself as well. I'm also self-employed. I have a business name, but I run it. So I'm the owner,
Sole
operator.
proprietor.
I'm the whole
Yeah.
deal, just like you. Different worlds. All three of us can really share in that on
Right.
some level. But you're right. So when do you want to start hiring? Sounds like you need a little help.
I do need help, and I have to, like, I'm feel like I'm still at that point where I'm still trying to build the clientele, make sure that there's a foundation, make sure that there's a reputation that's being upheld, make sure that there's kind of return customers that I know I can always take on, and then kind of, you know, spread out and know that I've got other people that are like, because I've got 2 people at least in mind that I think would be great. I know one guy who's an amazing electrical engineer over at Tesla. The guy can take apart a car and put it all back together, and take an engine from one car and put it in another completely incompatible car. And I think he's brilliant, but
Yeah.
you know, like I know what his price tag is.
Well, what if we thought about a little bit smaller, like administrative stuff?
That's another
Like
thing I've
there
thought
are
about.
some things,
yeah.
right? There's parts, and you know, again, I struggle with this too. I know what my gifts and talents are, and I know what my price is.
Yeah.
But yet, I'm doing things that are outside of that, right?
Yeah. And
So you don't need an electrical engineer to do your invoicing.
No,
you
and
don't
that's-
need
yeah.
people to do your filing. You don't need people to do,
Right.
and that's a lot easier of a resource to manage
Right.
financially at first too.
Right, and that's like and I have to remind myself that that's the first place I look in terms of extra help is like admin. That's the easiest role to fill, as opposed to sourcing talent.
But how much time is that taking? Your admin.
I mean, a lot of it, like invoicing, doesn't take a whole lot of work. What takes the work with that is deciding what the price points are, or maybe having to negotiate with a client that has a certain budget. What takes up, I think, at least more mental capacity is just that management of all the projects, keeping track of everything. And if I have an admin to kind of put a calendar together,
Yep.
say like these are the priorities. This one's been on the books since last year. We need to close this one out. Or hey, this guy's asking for results or whatever. Like, what should we tell him? Somebody to at least manage that workflow, I guess, would be
And
helpful.
something that people get confused about is the difference between having an employee and having a contractor. You can find a contractor for piecework or bit work, but when you start requiring someone to show up at a certain place at a certain time, you get into that gray area of, oh, well, now we need an employee. So you may not need employees to start off with, but what you may need to do is an evaluation of everything you do. And I have a process that I do with people. If it brings you energy or brings you money, you do it. But you need to do things also that are within your strengths and your core competence. So if it brings you energy and it brings you money and it's in your core competence, do it. But if it's draining you and it's outside of your core competence, that's something you may need to look at. So to start out with a list of all the things that equals your business, and then you take that and you actually put data to it. So energy, money, energy, money, energy, money, energy, money. Okay, now I know what's up and down on that. Where am I competent? What brings me joy and energy?
Absolutely.
And when you siphon that off, then you can look at, and it might not be an admin. It might be that actually what I really don't like doing is these proposals. Actually, what I don't like doing is this part of business that people keep asking me for, but I don't do that. But there's a lot of money behind that. But you put that process to it, you put that list to it, you put some data to it, and then you analyze your data and go, that's what I need. And that's where you start to take the pressure off first. Because when you take that pressure valve off, what is draining you, it creates a vacuum, and nature hates vacuum. So something comes in rushing in to fill it, and that comes into more alignment. But the more in alignment you can be from the start, the more likely you are to create a focused practice that has that reputation and it has that go-to aspect that people are like, I absolutely need my engineering work, my chemical engineering, my whatever you are doing done here. This is where it's at, because you know where you're at. Heal from within, the outside takes care of itself.
Absolutely. Would you also agree to, Diane, that, you know, when we're assessing and evaluating burnout for Anthony today, that we have to kind of look at the personal too. You know, when you're maintaining a business, you're doing all of this. Sometimes what you don't want to do is the laundry or cleaning the bathrooms, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if you come home exhausted after, like, you know, I've been in the lab all day and, you know, like I know that I'm going to have another long day tomorrow and I'm like, oh, but I've got no clean clothes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, avoiding burnout has a lot to do with the agreements with yourself and the agreements with the others in your life. And if you don't have others in your life, where can you bring in that support staff, whether it's at home or at work? You know, I simply love getting my house cleaned. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing that I do for myself. And it brings me energy to not have to do that.
Right, right. So being resourceful and kind of looking at, you know, we may be experiencing burnout in one area. Maybe we see it in work, but it could be coming from multiple places.
Definitely.
And so we have to have balance. And I love to actually break down the word burn out. So burn is that internal fire, our spark, our passion, which it sounds like you have plenty of. You love being creative. You love all of these different projects. You want to take them on. You want to take them on. And then the out would be the absence of, right? So I'm burning out. My fire is getting diminished because unfortunately we're putting too much. So if we actually made a campfire and we kind of put it in a triangle, we can make a really beautiful fire. But if we put too much wood, it might kind of smolder and it smokes and we kind of have to run away from the smoke. So there's that perfect kind of place. And usually sometimes we burn too much and sometimes not enough. But I think there's kind of that perfect place. So when you think back to a time when you were really in that perfect place, maybe you could tell me a little bit about that and what was different.
I'd say I mean, in terms of like the short period of time that I've been doing this, I'd say I'm at a pretty good spot right now, having dealt with having had like a major episode where, you know, October, where I was having panic attacks on a near, like several times a week, which is like, this is not okay. Like
too much.
Human beings don't live like this.
Yep.
But like, you know, like, so there's kind of like a before and after. Like now I've learned how to kind of mitigate different projects on top of each other, and also kind of knowing that these deadlines are flexible. Like, you know, I might say this is going to take me a month, but I can always talk to my client and be like, hey, this isn't going to happen by this time. I hope you're okay with this taking more like another week, because we had the holidays and that ate into my productivity. Yep. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but
for all of us.
I remember over the summer when I had a private lab set up for me, in Maryland. It was, you know, like I told them everything I needed. I told them all the safety like equipment that I needed there. All like just I gave them all the specs on how to build out this lab on you know, their property, their private piece of property on 35 acres. And they, you know, one of them was out of state. One of them, it was their house, and he would go to work, and I was just left there to you know, make this chemical compound that they had contracted me to make. And they, you know, my rate was more than adequate. They covered all of my dining, like all my food expenses. They had like a room for me to stay in. Mm-hmm. They paid for my plane ticket. You know, we even went out to dinner at night. Like I felt like I was appreciated, and that I was taken care of. And it's like, okay, this is the only thing I've got to focus on right now. I've got to think like further down the line of other projects after this project's over. But I'm here for a week. They're paying for this entire week. I'm gonna make like a huge chunk of money that's gonna float me into the next month, and I don't have to worry about anything. And I think that's that's great. That's just the best feeling, knowing that, hey, I don't, as a chronic worrier, like knowing like that you're at a point where like, hey, things are good. I'm taken care of. I'm getting what I need, and I don't have to worry about, at least right now, this moment. I don't have to stress.
Yeah, you can have that ultimate focus. And I think that's a great place to you kind of pull this all together, is that avoiding burnout is really a refocusing and a recommitment to what matters to you. What matters to you and what matters to the whole look of your life. It's not it's not business and life. It's just life, and business just happens to be along for the ride, and more so when you're self-employed.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah. So to really hone in on that focus, do that exercise, do that energy. What brings me energy? What brings me money? Because energy is just. And money is just green energy. Really, that's really what it is. And do that exercise and see what's within your core competency and what's not. And then, look at what makes you burn. What really makes you burn, and then what's putting it out. And what's really putting that fire out. I think if you accomplish all of that, you can really make sure that the flames are burning bright and serving the world and accomplishing one of the things. So Anthony, what would you say your biggest takeaway is from today?
I'd say my biggest takeaway, I think, is especially the talk about, like if I've got the vision to turn this into something bigger, if I've got the passion to keep it moving, then I'm going to have to start to think about, like, okay, what are my core competencies versus what are the things that are costing me energy, that are, taking away from my ability to focus on these things that are my core competencies. Like, like I might, go off into the atmosphere about thinking about hiring extra talent when, really a huge part of it, and I know this in the back of my mind, is having like somebody to take care of like basically the admin tasks, like even proposals. Like it wasn't something that came off the top of my head, but like even writing proposals, I've got to write this sales pitch. I've got to talk about who I am, what I do, how I can, and like have to do this over and over several times a day.
And why reinvent the wheel every time? If you cannot reinvent the wheel every time you do a proposal, that happens faster. So where can you look for efficiencies in what you're doing?
Exactly.
Kristen, anything at it?
Oh, just kind of like he said, just stop the bleeding. Really look at what's draining, look at what's not working, and be solution oriented and focused. You have everything it takes, but I think that we kind of get a little bit of like a hoarder mentality around our businesses.
Definitely, yeah.
And it's like mine, take, nobody touch it, it's my baby. But understand that none of us are successful alone. It takes a village. It takes other people buying your product, wanting your talent, promoting you. So don't be afraid to reach out and let other people shine too. So you don't know how you maybe contracting with someone could help their life, but it also relieves a lot of pressure and reignites that focus in yours.
Sure, that is a good point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was Business Therapy with Diane Hansen and Christine Salvo, our guest, brilliant engineer, Anthony.
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Thank you.
Have a great work day.